Trump told Obama to keep quiet, but Obama's calm response without anger and without even mentioning Trump's name sent shockwaves across the country. The tension in the James S. Brady press briefing room was heavy even before the question came. Reporters filled every seat, pens ready, cameras locked on the podium. President Trump stood firm, gripping the lectern like he was facing an opponent. Then he delivered the line that set everything off. Barack Obama has been one of the most divisive figures in American history. For the good of this nation, he should stay silent. He's had his turn, it's time to step aside. The room went still, reporters exchanged glances, whispering wow as they scribbled notes. One finally asked, "Mr. President, are you saying former President Obama should stop speaking on national issues?" Trump leaned forward and answered bluntly, "Exactly, this country doesn't need him criticizing or acting like he's still in charge. It's harmful, he should just be quiet." Within minutes, headlines flashed across the country. Social media exploded, some furious, others cheering. Trump was known for attacking rivals, but this was different. It was direct, public, and aimed at someone who still commanded deep respect years after leaving office. In Indiana, retired teacher Laura Whitman gasped at her TV. "Did he really say that?" she murmured while her husband shook his head. In an Arizona bar, college students watched. Why died. One, a political science major, laughed nervously. "He's basically daring Obama to respond." Journalists in Washington raced to publish the clip. Former Obama aides buzzed each other with the same question: should he respond, or would silence be stronger? Meanwhile, Trump brushed off the uproar, moving on as if nothing happened. But the message was clear: he wanted Obama gone from the national stage. For years, Trump resented Obama's lasting influence through speeches, interviews, even casual remarks. Now he had said it outright. The irony: by trying to silence him, Trump had put Obama right back in the center of America's conversation. By nightfall, every major network replayed the exchange, while commentators argued, was Trump bold or just reckless? At a small diner in Akron, Ohio, truck driver Bill Henderson pointed at the TV. "You don't tell a former president to shut up," he muttered over his sandwich. The waitress refilled his coffee and whispered, "Makes him sound scared." Across the country, people wondered the same thing. If Obama answered, it could dominate headlines for weeks. If he stayed silent, the mystery might speak louder then. Any words. By evening, anchors from Los Angeles to Dallas ended their broadcasts with the same question: would Obama respond? No one knew, but the nation was waiting. Behind the scenes, conversations had already begun. In his Washington, D.C. study, Obama sat with a book in his lap, though his attention was fixed on the TV replaying Trump's press conference. Michelle leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "You knew this was coming," she said quietly. Obama tapped the book's spine, deep in thought. "Yeah," he replied, "but telling me to be quiet, that's new." Elsewhere, former aides messaged. Furiously, some urged him to hit back, others advised silence. "Don't let him drag you into a fight," one text said. Another countered, "The country needs to hear from you now." At home, Michelle remained cautious. She knew the toll politics had taken on him. "You don't owe him a response," she reminded. "Sometimes silence says more." Obama nodded but stayed restless. His daughters chimed in too. Moliere urged him to ignore it, warning Trump wanted attention. Sasha's message was different. "People still look up to you. Don't let him rewrite things." That was the dilemma. Silence could leave Trump's words unchallenged, reshaping the legacy of his presidency. A response risked pulling him into the political storm he tried to escape. The next day, in a quiet office at Georgetown University, a few trusted advisors gathered. Valerie Jarrett leaned forward. "This isn't just about you, Barack. If a sitting president can tell a former president to shut up and no one pushes back, what does that say?" David Seamus, one of his longtime strategists, added carefully, "We have to weigh the bigger picture. If you hit too hard, it feeds his narrative. If you go too soft, it looks like he intimidated you." The debate wasn't just in Washington, it was inside Obama himself. He had always believed in patience, in choosing his battles carefully. But pressure was building everywhere. In Toledo, Ohio, community organizers gathered in a cramped office still lined with old 2008 campaign posters. A young organizer, Tamara, spoke what many were feeling. People are waiting for him. They want to believe someone still cares about truth and decency. That night, back on the porch at home, Obama sat scrolling headlines on his phone. There, already writing think pieces about whether I should respond, he murmured. Some say silence is weakness, others say it's strength. Michelle placed her hand on his. You've always said the right words come when they're needed most. So ask yourself, are they needed now? He didn't answer. Instead, he looked up at the same night sky that had once watched over him in Iowa, Denver, and St. Louis when he spoke of hope and unity. That spirit wasn't gone, it was waiting. But the longer he stayed quiet, the more silence felt like its own statement. By the third day after Trump's remarks, the pressure was undeniable. Networks filled hours with panels debating his silence. Was it strategic or hesitation? Twitter boiled with competing hashtags, hashtag Speak Obama and hashtag Stay Silent. Every side projected their hopes and frustrations onto one man who hadn't spoken a word. Inside the Obama home, the living room had become a kind of war room. Newspapers covered the coffee table, each headline screaming Trump's remarks. CNN played the clip endlessly, while Fox News painted Obama as too afraid to reply. Michelle set down a cup of tea beside him. You can't carry this weight forever, she said softly. But I know you feel like you have to. Obama rubbed his temple. It's not about me if I respond. It can't be about ego or trading insults. It has to mean something. That afternoon, he called Valerie Jarrett. Their conversations had always been candid, but this one felt heavier. Val, what happens if I say nothing? He asked. Her voice was steady. If you say nothing, his words stand, and in this climate, silence will look like surrender. People will think you're afraid to confront him. You're not, but perception matters. Obama exhaled slowly. He knew she was right. Still, the risks were real. The country was already on edge. Economic frustration, cultural divides, political tension. One wrong word could be the spark that set everything off. That evening, Obama called his daughters. Sasha answered first, her voice firmer and more grown-up than he remembered from their White House days. Dad, you always taught us that when someone bullies you, you don't back down. You don't have to fight dirty, but you stand up. Malia chimed in, gentler but just as clear. You've always believed in the power of words. If you don't use them now, when will you? After the call ended, their voices lingered in his mind. Michelle, his advisors, his daughters all urging him the same way. The country wasn't just waiting for Barack Obama, the man they were. Waiting for Barack Obama, the voice. Across America, that need was obvious. In Dayton, Ohio, a high school civics class replayed Trump's press conference on YouTube. Their teacher asked, "What should Obama do?" A boy in the back said, "He should clap back, show Trump he can't silence people." A girl countered, "No, he should be calm, remind us what leadership looks like." Their debate echoed the nations. Should he fight fire with fire or rise above it? The next morning, Obama walked through his neighborhood, Secret Service, trailing a few steps behind. Joggers, dog walkers, and parents with strollers passed by. Some waved, others simply nodded. A man stopped mid-run and said, "We need your voice, sir. Don't let him take it away." Obama thanked him quietly and kept walking, but the words stayed with him. Even strangers were waiting. That night, he sat at his desk with a yellow legal pad. Slowly, deliberately, he began writing not a speech, but questions to himself. What is my responsibility? What does the country need? How do I respond without sinking to his level? Hours passed, page after page filling with thoughts. Finally, Michelle appeared in the doorway. She didn't say a word, just raised her eyebrows. Obama looked up. "I think I have to do this," he admitted. Michelle kissed his forehead and whispered, "Then do it the way only you can." but deciding to respond was only the beginning. The real challenge would be how. Obama was never one for off-the-cuff soundbites. Every word he'd ever spoken in public had been weighed and polished with care. If he was going to answer Trump, it couldn't be casual. It had to mean something. It had to last. By morning, his study resembled a campaign headquarters. Stacks of notes, highlighted articles, and open laptops covered the desk. Former aides were now fully in the loop, joining Zoom calls that stretched late into the night. On one screen, strategist David Simes leaned forward, his voice steady but urgent. "Barack, we need to be strategic. If this looks like a personal fight between you and Trump, you'll lose half the country before you even begin," David warned. Valerie Jarrett, also on the call, nodded. "Speak about values, not personalities. This isn't you versus him, it's about leadership itself." Obama jotted quick notes in the margins of his pad. "So the tone has to be calm, measured, but firm." "Exactly," Valerie said. "People need to feel the steadiness that's missing right now." Michelle moved in and out of the room, listening more than speaking. Her reminders were short but sharp. "Talk to those who've lost faith, not just your base." And later, setting down a plate of food, she added, "Don't bother saying his name. Everyone already knows who you mean." The house fell into a rhythm. Days blurred into nights as drafts piled up. Obama paced the whole way with his yellow pad, murmuring lines under his breath, crossing them out, starting again. He tested sentences aloud, listening for tone and weight. One rainy night, with Valerie on speakerphone, he read a line he had just written: "Leadership isn't about silencing voices, it's about listening, even when it's uncomfortable." There was silence, then Valerie's voice. "That's it. That's the kind of line people remember." From the couch, Michelle smiled faintly. "That one sounds like you." Still, doubts lingered. Too strong, too soft? He knew every syllable would be pulled apart by millions. He wanted to be careful without sounding timid bold, but never reckless. Meanwhile, speculation across the country reached a fever pitch. On MSNBC, a commentator insisted he'll call for unity. "Mark my words." On Fox News, another scoffed. "He won't say anything meaningful, he never does." In Cleveland, Ohio, factory workers debated during their late-night break. Rosa, a woman tightening her gloves, sighed, "I just want to hear someone sound like a grown-up again." A coworker nodded. "If anyone can do that, it's him." Back in D.C., the weight pressed on Obama. Late at night, he sat at the kitchen table with Michelle, coffee cooling in his hands. "I've been out of office for years," he admitted, "but it feels like people are asking me to step back into something I walked away from." Michelle reached across the table. "They're not asking you to take back power. They're asking you to remind them it still exists." By week's end, the speech was no longer scattered notes, it was a message, clear and steady. News networks caught wind and producers whispered about a possible Obama statement. Anchors leaned in, hinting that something was coming. The nation, once again, held its breath. The announcement dropped late that afternoon. Barack Obama would deliver a nationally televised address from his home in Washington, D.C. No subject revealed, no details leaked, just a time, a place, and the promise of words that everyone knew were meant for one man. Newsrooms erupted, phones rang, headlines flashed, and the countdown began. In Los Angeles, producers shouted across studio floors, shuffling lineups and clearing space. In Dallas, anchors rehearsed their openings, knowing millions would be watching. At the White House, aides scrambled to draft responses before Obama had even spoken. For everyday Americans, it became must-see TV. Families in the suburbs, truck drivers at rest stops, workers on break in corner stores all set reminders. Social media swelled with countdowns, hashtags trending long before airtime, hashtag Obama speaks, hashtag leadership, hash answering Trump. By 7:30, an hour before the broadcast, Obama's home in Washington was calm but focused. The living room had been transformed into a studio. Bookshelves lined the background. A single lamp cast a warm glow. No podium, no crowd, just a man and a camera. Obama sat quietly, scanning his notes one last time. Michelle fussed with his tie despite his protests. "You always said presentation matters," she teased. "Let them see the calm before the storm." He smiled, squeezed her hand. "Let's just hope they hear the words." A small production team whispered final checks. 5 minutes, one murmured, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Across the country, anticipation peaked. In Columbus, college students crowded into a dorm lounge. In Phoenix, a barber closed early, inviting friends to gather around his flat screen. In Minneapolis, an elderly couple sat hand in hand, waiting quietly. And in the White House, Trump paced his dining room, muttering to aides, he better not cross the line. At exactly 8:30 p.m. Eastern, the broadcast began. The announcer's voice introduced him, former President Barack Obama, speaking tonight from Washington, D.C. The camera framed him, simply no stage, no audience, just Obama seated, steady, eyes fixed on the lens. He began slowly, his voice measured. "Good evening. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but recent comments have made it clear that silence is no longer an option. Not because of what was said about me, but because of what moments like this mean for the country we love." Millions leaned closer. The familiar calm cadence was there, but with a sharper edge, a conviction that cut through the noise. Leadership, he continued, isn't about silencing voices or telling people to sit down and be quiet. True leadership means listening even when it's uncomfortable. It means speaking the truth even when it's hard, and it means remembering that this nation is bigger than any one person. In living rooms across America, reactions came instantly: quiet nods, whispered yes, even small claps of approval. In the dorm lounge, a student whispered, "He's not naming him, but everyone knows exactly who he means." In Phoenix, the barber leaned forward, eyes wide. "Man, that's a leader talking." In the White House, Trump scowled at the screen, muttering under his breath. On camera, Obama paused, letting the weight of silence stretch, then leaned forward slightly, not toward the lens, but as if speaking directly to people in their kitchens, living rooms, and bedrooms. "We can't solve our problems by shouting down those we disagree with. We can't build a better future by pretending truth is optional. Our democracy depends on honesty, accountability, and the courage to face facts." That's what I believe in, that's what I will always stand for. The closing line hit hard. No one, not even a president, should be afraid of those values. The address had only just begun, but its impact was already clear. The country had waited for Obama's voice, and now that they heard it, they knew this moment would be remembered. His tone never rose, yet every sentence landed with weight, like stones dropped into still water, sending ripples through millions of homes. America's strength, he continued, eyes steady on the camera, has never come from silencing critics. It comes from facing criticism head-on and proving our ideals can withstand it. It comes from ordinary people doing extraordinary things, not from any one person demanding loyalty or obedience. Across the nation, hearts quickened. He wasn't sparring, wasn't trading insults, he was lifting the conversation to higher ground. And in that contrast, Trump's earlier remarks seemed smaller by the second. In Birmingham, Alabama, a nurse named Denise watched with her teenage son. She leaned over and whispered, "That's how a president talks," without taking his eyes off the screen. Her son nodded. "Why doesn't it sound like that anymore?" Obama paused again, lowering his voice. "We can disagree passionately about taxes, about healthcare, about how to grow our economy. That's democracy. But when we start treating fellow citizens as enemies, when we act as if only one voice deserves to be heard, we lose something far greater than a political fight." The line struck deep. On Twitter, clips spread before the speech had even ended. "That's the America I remember," one user wrote. "Finally, words that sound like leadership," another added. Hashtags like #unity and #Obama speech trended, drowning out the anger from earlier in the week. In a Cincinnati bar, televisions played with the sound off, subtitles scrolling at the bottom. Still, the room was silent, eyes fixed on the screen. One man shook his head and murmured, You can mute him and it still feels powerful. Back in the broadcast, Obama's cadence built steady, deliberate, familiar from years past, but sharpened with age. We don't strengthen this nation by tearing people down. We don't honor the Constitution by telling others to stay silent. And we don't lead by fear, we lead by courage. The rhythm was unmistakable, the voice of a leader who had found his moment again. He wasn't running for office anymore. He wasn't chasing votes. That freedom made his words feel sharper, almost pure and tangled from politics. Even some longtime critics admitted it. On a conservative radio station in Omaha, the host, usually harsh on Obama, paused mid-show. Look, he told listeners, you may not like his politics, I don't, but tonight you can't deny he sounds presidential, and that's something people are hungry for, whether they admit it or not. Obama closed with a direct appeal. This isn't about me, it's not about one man trying to silence another. It's about whether we believe in a democracy where every voice matters. If we stop believing in that, we lose more than elections, we lose ourselves. He ended without flourish. Calm, steady, I still believe in this country, I always will. And I believe in you, the people. Thank you, and good night. The screen faded to black. The silence that followed felt electric. Across America, people sat frozen. Some wiped tears, others leaned back in thought. For a moment, politics itself seemed secondary. What lingered was older, deeper reminder of what leadership could sound like. At the White House, Trump reportedly exploded, storming away from the TV, raging at aides about phony speeches and disloyal media, but the fury only made the contrast clearer. Obama hadn't raised his voice once, yet he had taken control of the national conversation. In homes, bars, classrooms, and coffee shops, the talk was the same. His reply wasn't just an answer, it was a vision of the country people wanted to believe in. Still, the true weight of his words wouldn't be measured that night, but the next morning. By dawn, his voice was everywhere. Barack Obama's calm address had spread like lightning across the nation. Clips flooded social media: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. A 20-second clip where he declared, "Leadership isn't about silencing voices, it's about listening," was reposted thousands of times. His line, "We can't build a better future by pretending truth is optional," hit 10 million views before breakfast. Even those who rarely followed politics couldn't escape it. His words played on car radios, morning shows, airport TVS, even gym screens. At a diner in Wichita, Kansas, truckers, retirees, and young families paused their breakfast as the broadcast replayed overhead. A woman holding a toddler whispered to the waitress, "That sounded like the America I grew up with." The waitress nodded, refilling coffee. "Feels like somebody opened a window and let fresh air in." In Los Angeles, a classroom of high school seniors watched the speech again on YouTube. Their teacher asked what struck them most. A boy raised his hand. It wasn't angry. It wasn't yelling, it was just steady. That's what made it powerful. The reach of Obama's words went far beyond ordinary households. Celebrities retweeted his lines with captions like, "This is leadership, and we needed this." Musicians quoted him in their lyrics. Athletes posted videos of entire locker rooms watching the address, and comedians used late-night monologues to marvel at how rare it felt to hear a political statement that wasn't drenched in outrage. News outlets scrambled to capture the moment. NBC ran the headline, "Obama's speech resonates nationwide." The Washington Post declared, in contrast to Trump, Obama strikes tone of unity. Even conservative-leaning papers conceded the impact, with one Texas headline reading, "Obama reminds Americans he still has a voice." On talk radio in Milwaukee, a host who normally avoided praising Democrats admitted, "I don't care what side you're on, last night sounded presidential." That's something we've been missing. Ordinary Americans joined in too. In a Detroit barbershop, customers watched a replay between haircuts. It's like he walked back into the room after all these years. One man said, "Just to remind us what grown-ups sound like." Another added, "And he didn't even raise his voice." That's what makes it sting in small towns. Church Groups discussed the speech over coffee. In big cities, office workers replayed clips at their desks. Parents texted quotes to their kids. Students debated lines over bagels. For one day, at least, a divided nation seemed to be talking about the same thing. Inside the White House, the mood was starkly different. Trump awoke early expecting to see his usual news cycle, only to be greeted by wall-to-wall coverage of Obama's address. The split-screen image Obama, Trump scowling flashed across every network. Staffers tried to shift his focus, but he fumed. "They're all talking about him, not me him." Even reporters noticed something unusual. Normally polarized networks were showing the same clips, quoting the same lines, sometimes even using the same language. Analysts remarked that the country hadn't reacted this uniformly to a political speech in years. Not everyone was impressed. Trump loyalists mocked Obama online as weak or boring. But those jeers only deepened the contrast. Trump's fiery, combative style versus Obama's calm, steady presence. By afternoon, one thing was clear: Obama's words had cut through the noise. His speech replayed in airports, bus stations, classrooms, and cafes. Quotes appeared on posters, spread through memes, even scribbled onto protest signs in cities like St. Louis and Philadelphia. In a coffee shop in Des Moines, a college student named Jared turned his laptop toward a stranger. "You've got to hear this part," he said, playing the clip where Obama warned, "If we stop believing in every voice, we lose more than elections, we lose ourselves." The stranger listened, nodded, and replied, "That's it, right?" It wasn't just a speech anymore. It had become a cultural touchstone, something ordinary people pointed to and said, "This is how it should sound." But with the nation buzzing, there was one man who couldn't ignore it: Donald Trump. His reaction, boiling just beneath the surface, was about to explode, and it would drive the divide even deeper. The next morning, cable networks were still looping Obama's address, every phrase dissected, every headline declaring his return to the national stage. Obama strikes back, read front pages from Denver to Pittsburgh. A measured voice in a divisive time, Obama's calm rebuke reverberates in the Oval Office, though. Calm was the last thing on Donald Trump's mind. Storming in just after sunrise, he carried a stack of newspapers in one hand and his phone in the other. He slammed the papers onto the resolute desk, glaring at his aides. "They're all talking about him, not me him." Advisors tried to steer Trump toward a briefing on the economy, but he waved them off. "We'll deal with that later. Right now, I need to respond." By mid-morning, his thumbs were flying across his phone. The tweets came rapid-fire, each sharper than the last. Obama was the most divisive president in U.S. history. He should have stayed quiet. Weak speech, no solutions. News cycles lit up instantly. Television panels erupted, some anchors shaking their heads at the tone, others defending his right to hit back. But one thing was certain: Trump's response only put Obama's words further at the center of national debate. In Toledo, a factory worker named Pete leaned against a vending machine on break, scrolling through the tweets. "He's rattled," Pete muttered. His coworker glanced over. "Yeah, you don't fire off like that unless it got to you." In Seattle, a cafe of young professionals laughed as they read the posts aloud. One woman shook her head. "He doesn't get it, does he?" Obama didn't even say his name, and still it hit him this hard. The reaction wasn't limited to everyday citizens. On Capitol Hill, a handful of Republican lawmakers admitted privately that their phones were buzzing with messages from constituents praising Obama's tone. One senator, speaking off the record, confessed, "I may not agree with Obama on much, but you can't deny the guy knows how to sound like a leader. That's a problem for us." Double quotes. Democrats seized the moment. Fundraising emails quoted Obama's lines about democracy and truth. Activists posted videos urging supporters to stand with decency. The speech had become a rallying cry, even if Obama hadn't intended it that way. But Trump wasn't finished. That afternoon, he called an impromptu press conference on the White House lawn. Cameras swarmed as he stepped to the microphones, sunlight glinting off the windows behind him. "Look, folks, He began, voice rising. That speech last night, it was pathetic. Totally weak. No solutions, just words, words, words. We've got real problems in this country, and Obama had 8 years to fix them. Did he? No. Now he wants to lecture us. Sorry, not happening, reporters fired back. One asked if Obama's words resonated because they spoke to unity. Trump scoffed, waving his hand, unity, give me a break. He divided this country more than anyone, everybody knows it. The press conference grabbed headlines again, but not the way Trump hoped. Networks played clips of his fiery dismissal side by side with Obama's calm, steady delivery the night before. The contrast was striking. In Kansas City, a history teacher paused class to show his students both clips back to back. When he asked, which one sounded more presidential? The response was unanimous, and it wasn't Trump. Even late-night comedians seized the moment. One quipped, Obama gave a fireside chat. Trump gave a fire alarm. The crowd roared, yet beneath the laughter, analysts warned of something more serious. This isn't just two men trading words. One said on CNN, it's a battle over tone, over truth, over what leadership in America should look like. Back at home in Washington, Obama sat quietly with Michelle, watching the coverage. He shook his head slowly, the glow of the TV reflecting in his glasses. At Trump's fiery press conference, Obama shook his head and murmured, he's doing half the work for me. Michelle placed a hand on his shoulder, because you didn't make it about him, that's why people are listening. The irony was unmistakable. In trying to silence Obama, Trump had amplified his voice louder than ever. And what no one foresaw was how long the moment would last, or how far its ripples would travel. From Washington to state capitals to small-town diners. By week's end, the aftershocks of Obama's address were still everywhere. What began as a jab in a White House briefing had turned into a national reckoning over leadership, tone, and the meaning of democracy. Commentators called it the sharpest contrast yet between the two men, one brash, fiery, often impulsive, the other calm, deliberate, measured. In Congress, lawmakers whispered about it in elevators and behind closed doors. I haven't seen this kind of response to a speech in years, a Democratic representative from Ohio told a colleague. People aren't just agreeing, they're relieved. Even some Republicans, though careful not to say so publicly, admitted the remarks had landed harder than they expected. On Sunday shows, analysts pulled out polling charts showing subtle but noticeable shifts. Independents, often disenchanted by partisan shouting, responded most positively to Obama's emphasis on unity and accountability. One host summed it up, this wasn't a campaign speech, but the resonance is undeniable. The cultural impact stretched even further. Across the Midwest, pastors quoted Obama's words in sermons, weaving his call for listening and courage into messages about humility and faith. In San Antonio, one pastor told his congregation, when a leader says no one, not even a president, should be afraid of accountability, that's not politics. That's morality in everyday life. People found themselves repeating his lines. At a grocery store in Omaha, two strangers recognized a quote on a magazine cover. I didn't think I'd hear something like that again, one said, the other nodded. It's been a long time since words felt that steady. Teachers brought the speech into classrooms. In Cleveland, an English teacher handed out excerpts for students to analyze. The discussion quickly moved beyond grammar. A teenager raised his hand. Why do we accept so much yelling in politics when we could have this instead? Even abroad, the address resonated. In London, headlines read, Obama's voice echoes across America once more. In Berlin, Der Spiegel wrote, the United States still knows its conscience. Foreign leaders quietly remarked that his words reminded them of a steadier era in American politics, one less dominated by shouting matches and personal insults. Inside the White House, though, frustration deepened. Trump's advisors urged him to pivot focus on trade, foreign policy, jobs. But no matter where he turned, the shadow of Obama's remarks loomed large. Every interview Trump gave circled back to the same comparison: his fury against Obama's calm. And across the nation, the conversation lingered. What had started as one man telling another to stay silent had become something far larger, a question about what kind of leadership Americans wanted and what kind of country they still believed they could be. Every interview Trump gave seemed to circle back to the same subject: his reaction to Obama. Reporters wouldn't let it go, and his irritation only kept the story alive. For Obama, the days after the speech were strikingly quiet. No follow-up interviews, no rallies, no statements. He let the words stand on their own. That silence became part of the message. Where Trump was constant and fiery, Obama was calm and finite, allowing the echo of his address to carry without interference. Back in Akron, at the same diner where Bill Henderson had muttered about Trump's first remarks, customers gathered again over coffee. A waitress admitted, "I replayed the speech 3 times at home. It's not that I agreed with every word, but I felt like somebody finally remembered how to talk to us like adults." Bill grinned. That's all people want to be spoken to with respect. On college campuses, the generational divide was clear. Younger voters, too young to fully grasp Obama's presidency, were hearing him anew. At Arizona State, a sophomore told her friends, "I wasn't paying attention back then, but hearing him now, I get why people miss it." The impact was undeniable. The speech reignited a conversation about leadership, what it should look like, how it should sound, and why it mattered. But for Obama, the lesson carried weight beyond politics. In the days that followed, something unexpected lingered. It wasn't just the words, it was the feeling they left behind. For once, people weren't dissecting politics as sport or cheering for their side. They were asking deeper questions. What does leadership mean? Can calmness be strength in an age of constant noise? In Pittsburgh, a steelworker named John replayed the address for his teenage daughter. She asked why it mattered so much. He thought for a moment, then said, "Because it showed us that strong doesn't mean loud. Sometimes strong means steady. Sometimes it means being the one who doesn't lose his cool." In Phoenix, churchgoers lingered after Sunday service, sharing the lines that struck them most. An older woman said softly when he said, "If we stop believing in every voice, we lose more than elections, we lose ourselves." It felt like he was talking to me. Heads nodded all around. Even in places where Trump's support was strongest, whispers of respect surfaced. A farmer in rural Oklahoma admitted to a neighbor, "I don't like the guy's policies, never did, but I can't lie, that speech made me think." The lessons stretched beyond politics. Parents repeated Obama's words to their kids. Teachers reminded students that listening mattered more than shouting. Community leaders wove his lines into town halls, fundraisers, even vigils. His calm tone had become the very thing people clung to in a week otherwise filled with anger and noise. Meanwhile, Trump kept firing back tweet after tweet. Press conferences, interviews, tweets, it almost didn't matter. Each angry remark only highlighted the difference. The louder Trump became, the steadier Obama's words appeared in comparison. The more Trump demanded attention, the more people kept replaying Obama's quiet confidence, and that's where the lesson settled. Words don't need to be loud to carry weight. They need honesty, they need clarity, and above all, they need respect for the people who hear them. A few days later, sitting in his backyard with a cup of coffee, Obama confided to an old friend, "The job of a leader isn't to silence critics, it's to hear them, to weigh them, and to answer them with truth. Even if the truth isn't what they want to hear." The friend later recalled, he wasn't bragging. He wasn't even smiling, he just meant it, and that's why people still listen. The episode became a mirror for the nation. Americans saw two paths laid bare, one rooted in rage and insult, the other in calm persistence and responsibility. The choice wasn't only political, it was about the kind of society people wanted to live in. By the end of the week, a Philadelphia radio host captured it best. Obama didn't just answer Trump, he reminded Americans of themselves. And that's why it hit so hard. That is the heart of this story. True strength isn't found in silencing others. It's found in listening, in speaking truth with calm resolve, And in remembering that respect is the foundation of democracy, if there's one takeaway, it's this: words can shape nations, and how they're spoken matters as much as the words themselves. So ask yourself, what kind of voice do you want guiding the future? If you believe in the power of truth spoken with calm strength, don't let this be the last time you think about it. Support conversations that matter, share stories that lift rather than tear down. Because leadership begins with the example we set for one another every single day. And if you found value in this story and want to hear more narratives told with honesty, context, and reflection, subscribe to the channel. Stay with us, because the conversations that shape tomorrow start right here together.